What is up? My name is Cam Kowati and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the Beacn Mix Create and whether it is worth it as an audio mixer for you. So stick around. We will decide at the end, is it worth it? Don't skip to the end though, wait. Watch the middle part too, okay? There are a couple of other audio mixers on the market at the moment, such as the Go XLR, the Go XLR Mini, the Rodecaster, and the Elgato Wave XLR. The difference is that this does not have any XLR input. So this is great for you if you already have an audio interface or you are using a USB mic. Inside the box, there is not very much. There is the Beacn Mix Create itself, as well as a USB-A to USB-C cable, and that's it. So let's look at this. Now that we've opened it up, let's talk a little bit about this. You have the dials here, which allow you to adjust the audio as you want. You can also press them down to mute the audio for everyone. Below each of them, there is a mute button, and you can use this mute button by default to mute the audio from the audience, whereas you will still be able to hear it. Over here, you also have your audience mix. This allows you to hear whatever your audience is going to hear. And then these two buttons here, these allow you to change the pages in case you have more than 4 audio sources on the Beacn itself. At the back, it's connected by USB-C. When you open the program, this is what it looks like. You can see here we have our different audio categories, and you can assign different programs to the different categories, and then they will stick to that category and be controlled by that dial. There was an update recently, and now what happens is all of the programs appear down here in the applications window, and then you can just drag them into whichever category you want based on how you want to assign them. What is here is on the left on each category is what it will sound like to you, and on the right is how it will sound like to your audience. By default, they are linked, so when you adjust one, the other adjusts the same. You also have the option to click this link here, and then you can dynamically adjust them. So for example, you might want to have a different audio output for your audience, whereas for you, you have another one. This is particularly handy for things like if you want to listen to your own music mix, but you don't want it to appear on your stream, or maybe you don't want it to interfere with your gameplay. This can be really useful and a really powerful feature. For each of the categories, you also have the option to adjust what the behavior of the button presses is. So for this one, this affects how the dials react when you press them down. And you also have the mute button underneath the dials. You can change how that reacts as well. Again, this can be really useful depending on the audio category. Some of them you might want specific behaviors as opposed to the default behavior, and this way you can have more customization options over how they react. Down here you have the routing table. This is an incredibly powerful tool as well because it allows you to decide what audio channels the audio will go to. Most importantly is at the end here you have the audio for your VOD track. So you can choose to have certain elements of your audio not appear in the VODs, however they will still appear live. This again has many uses. So for example, if you are in voice chat with certain people, you don't want it to come through in your VOD, you just want to have it live. You can decide that it will go through in the live showing, however in the VOD it will not be heard. Hello, it is me, and for some reason I am slightly more bearded, but I don't know why I took this clip immediately after the previous ones and not like, you know, a few days later. Back to the clips. Now that we've looked at how you control it through Windows, let's talk about what's good about it and what's bad about it. Number one, it's really handy to use. Just in general, you have the 4 physical dials, so you can adjust the audio as you want dynamically throughout your stream or your recording. You don't have to stop and toggle anything in OBS or whatever stream program you are using. You can adjust it directly through the Beacn itself. You also have the sub mix button, which allows you to hear exactly what your audience are going to hear. And if you have different levels for yourself and for your audience, this can be a really powerful tool to use to make sure that the levels are correct for them. It also has the mute button to allow you to mute an audio source going to your audience. This can be really powerful if you're doing something like chatting with someone on a voice chat and you don't want that to come across to your audience, or maybe you want to listen to some copyrighted music and you don't want it to come through on your stream or your video. This can be a really good feature to use too. The paging buttons on the Mix Create are very powerful as well if you want to have very fine-grained control over many different audio sources and you can't fit them all on the one page. You have the paging buttons to allow you to scroll through the different audio sources, and that allows you to keep up with them and see what is happening with all of them instead of just sticking to the 4 that you have by default. One of the issues is that because all of the audio sources are exported from the Mix Create audio source itself, that means that you have less options for doing things like VSTs for your microphone. So if you want to add any filters to your microphone, you have to do one of two things. You have to run the microphone separately from the rest of the audio sources, or else you have to preload the VSTs onto the microphone before it goes into the Mix Create, which means adding more programs into the mix. Another issue I think is the UI colors. It can be very hard at a glance to see what the audio levels are like in relation to one another, and because at the moment you cannot adjust the UI colors for things like the audio levels and the background, this can be very difficult to distinguish at a glance. Another issue that I've noticed is that sometimes if you want to adjust the audio levels during use, you have to go and then save them if you want to keep them like that. There is no way to return them to the original set by default. Every time you try and shut down your computer, the program will prompt you to save your new settings. It would be great if there was a way you could press one of the buttons and it would reset them back to default. Again, it's a very small thing, but it could make a difference. For these issues, at least 2 of them are on the roadmap to be fixed. So this means while they're an issue now, they won't be like this in the future. Having said all that, do I think that this is worth the money? I genuinely do. Once they get these few issues fixed, I think it'll be a really powerful tool. I would use it all the time with my streams were it not for these few issues. There are a number of things like the sub-mix button and being able to adjust the audio levels on the fly that make this a really powerful tool, as well as being able to mute the audio sources from the audience and still hear them yourself. These things are really handy to be able to do, and I think that this is a very good piece of kit for any streamer out there. If you liked what you saw, why don't you like and subscribe to see more of this in the future? And why not let me know in the comments below, do you think that this is something that you would use yourself, or do you think that this is something that you have no interest in?